Good evening. Welcome to another Tennessee Thunder podcast brought to you by the Tennessee Freedom Coalition. Hope everyone is doing well out there. We had a few little technical difficulties, but looks like we're back on Facebook. So tonight we have a really good evening. I'm very excited to introduce you to our guest up and coming. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Tennessee Freedom Coalition and what we represent. We represent small government, low taxes, small regulation, and sound money, something we can all appreciate in a free America. And so we are sponsored by We the People, the Trump store in Pigeon Forge on Wares Valley in the Freedom Plaza, as well as Smoky Bear Shuttle. So be sure to check out our sponsors. We got a lot of great information about our sponsors in the podcast ahead. Tonight, we're very, very excited about introducing, without further ado, our very special guest, Miss Tracey Smith. And let me get us both on there. Hello, Miss Tracey.
Hey, Stephany.
Trying to get us both on the screen. Oh, I see. We got to hit this right here. Mr. Charles Cook, I'm sure, is watching and probably laughing. He seems to be the podmaster of all these podcasts. He's very good at what he does. If you've not seen Charles, please be sure to check out his podcast in Morristown, Tennessee. Welcome to the podcast, Tracey.
Thank you, Stephany. I appreciate you having me on this evening.
All right. So in all that ado, I lost your questions. So real quick, while I'm pulling up your questions and touching in my passwords and all that, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and what you represent.
Okay, fantastic. Well, actually, I am Tennessee born and bred, lived in Tennessee all of my life, except for, about 3 years or so when I had to endure some miserable football seasons in another SEC state. So other than that, I've been in Tennessee my whole life. And Tennessee is home. And this is where I want to be. This is what's important to me. I was in the medical field for over 30 years. And back in 2020, had an awakening, probably like most people in 2020, where we saw some things that were going on that just didn't seem quite right. Things weren't adding up, and came to a realization in my life. I had a really long talk with God one day, and came to the realization in my life that it was time for me to get off the couch. I couldn't just sit on the couch and watch what was going on anymore. I had to do something about it. And so that was my get off the couch moment. And that's when things started for me, and when I started to get involved in the local community.
Wonderful. And that's the story with many of us who were not very active in politics until pretty much around the time COVID hit. And yes. So who was you really? I mean, what kind of things? Tell us a little bit about yourself before you started your activism. What was a day like in Tracey Smith's life?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, before all of this, actually, if you had told me that I would be involved in this about, 5 or 10 years ago, I would probably laugh you out of the room, because this is certainly not where I ever intended to be or what I intended to be doing. This was what I would consider divine intervention, because before 2020, Tracey was focused on, career and, probably more than I should have been, career and family, and was so busy. We kind of get ourselves into this, or especially before 2020, we were all in this flow where we were just so quote unquote busy. There was always something to do. There was always something to keep us distracted. And so honestly, I didn't pay any attention to politics. I didn't pay any attention to what was going on locally. I wasn't involved in anything because in my mind, and, in the way probably most of us grew up, somebody else was handling that. So we didn't have to worry about it. So I would go and I would show up and I would vote. But honestly, I never checked who I was voting for, never really paid much attention. But I would go and vote and I would look for the right letter beside the name and I would check the box. And that's how I voted. And that was about the extent of my civic involvement, which I'm very ashamed to say now, because I was too busy to get involved in what was going on locally, because honestly, I felt safe. I felt secure. I felt like there was no need for me to be involved. And, somebody else is taking care of that. I don't have to. That's what I pay my taxes for, right? I pay my taxes, so somebody else is taking care of everything else. What I found out in 2020, like I said, that was my awakening moment where Tracey realized that, it's time for we the people to get involved, because things weren't adding up. When I was threatened, with my job of, you're going to have to take the shot or you're going to lose your job, and had a long talk with my spouse and said, listen, things aren't adding up. We're not exactly young pups. And so we've lived through a lot, and we've never in our entire lifetimes seen a government so determined to make us do something that they were willing to take away our livelihood to force us into it. And at that point, it's kind of like your spider senses start tingling. And I said, something's not right. Something's not right. I've never seen our government push anything on the people so hard. And it also, was a big realization for me that, guess what? We've reached a point in our society where they think that they tell us what to do. And it was very, very clear. 2020, like I said, was that wake up moment where I realized, something's, we should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque, because something is bad wrong. Something just isn't the way that it should be. And that's when I decided that, it was time for Tracey to change her focus, and really felt that God was calling me to do something different, and probably far out of my comfort zone, far out of anything I've ever done before. And, it was uncomfortable. And I honestly, I apologize to my husband in advance, before I started into any of this, because I told him that, that I really felt like that God was calling me to do something that was probably going to embarrass him. So I just went ahead and apologized in advance.
I understand that totally. And with me, it was, I had been an investigative reporter for many years here in rural Union County. So I was aware of a lot of the things that were borderline corruption or whatever. But, it's one thing to suspect your federal government of being a little bit on the corrupt side, but it's another thing when you look right in your backyard and realize that much of the same swamp-like behavior is happening. So tell us a little bit about your first experience realizing that the swamp existed right here at home.
I would have to say that my wake up moment for that was when I started getting involved locally, just, I would say, more observing than getting involved, because I've never done anything like this before in my life. I know nothing about politics, had never gotten involved in any of that before, didn't really know, the landscape or what I was getting involved in. And so, it's always best to kind of observe and learn before you really dive in head first. And so I started going to some of the local Republican club meetings. And, that's where I really got, let's say, a good taste of what's actually going on countywide in Knox County. And what I started seeing was that, as much as we think that there are people out there that are, planning and organizing and doing what they need to do to take care of business, they're not. So I was going to these club meetings, and they were far more concerned about their door prizes, to be quite honest with you, than they were organizing and planning how they were going to win the next election, or how they were going to find good candidates, good conservative candidates to run for office in that district. And, you know, and I tried really hard for a long time, you know, to go to those meetings and learn and get involved. But to be quite honest with you, I found out very quickly, they don't really want the public involved. And that's where, you know, I had another wake up moment, because I realized that the people that I thought were in charge and taking care of us, they're really not. So at these meetings, I would go and I would see the same people over and over again at all of the meetings, but really nobody in the community getting involved. And when people in the community tried to get involved, they were quickly pushed to the side and weren't allowed to speak at the meetings. And it was very disappointing, to be honest with you. So that's, you know, that's when I decided that it was time for a group that truly represented the people. That's when it was time for me to step up and say, okay, you know, if I'm really going to make a difference, then we're going to have to do it another way. This way isn't working. You know, it's the definition of insanity, right? When you do the same thing the same way over and over again and you expect a different result. And that's what I was seeing. And I was seeing the same people, the same group in the same club meetings and the same party, but they weren't getting anything done. And what they said and what they did were two different things, which is a lot of what we're seeing now, you know, in the Republican Party with all of the rhinos. They're not who they say they are, and it's unfortunate.
And you probably realized the way I did that the people going to these meetings, even though they are citizens, many of them are a part of bigger groups in the county. Wouldn't you call them perhaps lobbyists? You would see a lot of people there from local government. You would see people from the school system. You would see people from different groups within the government that were always getting up and speaking, making presentations. But yet there were very, very few citizens, everyday people that were coming to these meetings. And like you said, many of them trusted their elected representation to represent their interest. And I think the one thing that, you know, with 2020, what it showed us was that was not the case. Basically, whoever gets the ear of your elected representative, that's what they think everybody wants them to do, or looking at it from an innocent perspective, or they get some benefit from those special interests. So what were some of the special interests that you saw at some of those meetings that might have shocked you a little bit?
I'm not so sure that it was so much special interests as it was, what I was finding was that a person may be elected to a particular role and you think that that's all that they do. So for instance, they may be elected as a commissioner. And so you think that that's their only role. And what you find when you go to these meetings is that there is a significant amount of influence by certain people in these meetings, a significant amount of influence in that somebody that you think is just a commissioner is actually influencing somebody in another office to make decisions a certain way, let's say. And so, you know, it very much is a club. It's kind of like that, you know, that phrase that they say, you know, it's a club and you're not in it. We're not in that club. You know, we the people are not in that club. And I saw that very clearly from the meetings that I went to, because it was the same people over and over again. And you could tell by watching them talk and the things that they would say that they had a plan for things that they were doing, but it wasn't anything that you were going to hear about at these club meetings. The club meetings are really more of a social time than anything. So whatever they're doing, whatever they're discussing, you won't hear about it at the meeting because that's not where the discussions and the planning happen.
we like to call it the cool kids table over
Yes.
here at the coalition.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Very
That
much,
is,
if you went to high school, you know all about the cool kids table, and that
yes.
continues on into
And the
adulthood.
Mean Girls. There's Mean Girls too.
And
You
the
got to
mean
watch them.
girls.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of those shills over here on the local level that are mean girls. All right.
Yes.
We encounter them daily. One of the things that I noticed with 2020, like you said, all covers came off. I mean,
Mm.
the true colors came shining through, and especially with our children. That was the most shocking thing. And that's when I decided myself that I needed to do more, even though I was a community reporter. When I saw my children going through some of the stuff, I mean, in the beginning we didn't really know, but once we understood what was going on and it continued, and we started seeing our children affected, that's when the mama gloves started coming off the mamas. And we said, no, heck to the no. And I found myself in some of those confrontations at some of the schools relative to my child. And that's when I started reading the Moms for Liberty post on Facebook and realizing there were a lot of mama bears like me out there that had just basically had enough. So do you think that was a pivotal time in getting just like the regular people off the couch, as you said? Was that COVID? You think that was the biggest wake up call in all of this in the last few years?
I would love to tell you yes. I would sincerely love to be able to tell you that there were certain things in 2020, like with the jab mandates and with the things that were happening to our children. I would love to tell you that I saw that get masses of people off their couches. Unfortunately, it didn't. It didn't. And as much as I hear people gripe and complain about things they don't like, there are very few who are actually doing anything about it. There are very few. They may believe the same way we do. They feel the same way that we do. They're upset. They're angry. They want to see things change. They want their country back, but they're not willing to get off the couch to do anything about it. They're not willing to volunteer. They're not willing to, research candidates. They're not willing to go out and vote. There's so much that people could be doing. They just simply aren't. So I'll give you a couple of examples. And another thing is there are still a lot of sleepers. That's what I call sleepers, because they're still not awake to the things that are going on. And even when you try to tell them what's happening, they don't believe it. They just don't believe it can happen here. And they don't realize that we're way past that point. Not only can it happen here, it is happening here. And so we were at a meeting regarding, the school choice bill. And so we were listening to Representative Ritchie just discuss, the pros and cons of the bill, because we really wanted to learn about it. And, I had made a comment to him that we really need to be focusing our attention on actually teaching our children how to read and write and do math. We're graduating kids out of high school that can't make change. If you give them a $20 bill and and you only owe $16.40, they can't make change. If the cash register or the computer doesn't do it for them, they're stuck. And that's a really, really sad place for our society to be. And so I had made a comment that, number one, the education system is completely broken. And just needs a complete overhaul. And we need to stop accepting federal dollars, period. Because with federal dollars comes a whole lot of strings, and a whole lot of strings that we don't like. And so I made that comment, and I said, they need to focus on educating our children and, making sure that they do have these skill sets when they graduate, instead of, worrying about, them acting like cats or dogs when they're in school. And the lady that was at the meeting told me that was just something I saw on TV, and that stuff wasn't real, even though I can tell you that it is very real. And we did have it right here at Halls Middle School and Halls High School. And on top of that, back in 2022, not too long after Knox for Liberty was founded, we actually found out that there was an all-ages drag show that was coming to the Tennessee Theater. And it was right before Christmas. It was December 22nd of 22. And I personally called some of the largest churches in Knox County. There are almost 700 churches in Knox County. And I called some of the largest churches in Knox County and said, do you know that this is happening on December 22nd in Knoxville, in the city of Knoxville, and they are allowing children into this show? And it's not drag shows when we were kids or when we were teenagers were very different. They were more for fun. They were just kind of, something to laugh at. It was kind of more of a skit. The drag shows that you see now are very, very different. They're not for laughs. They're very sexualized. They're far beyond what any child should see. And they were allowing children into the show. So I called all of these churches, some of the largest in Knoxville, and guess how many churches showed up to stand with us because we could not get any of our local officials to stop the show. And look, if you're over the age of 18, you answer for whatever you do, but leave the kids out of it. And so, we couldn't get any of the local officials to do anything, and we could not get a single church in Knox County to stand with us. Not one. So I would love to tell you that people are engaged and people are standing up and people are doing what they need to be doing to fight back against some of this. But quite honestly, some of them are still too busy, and unfortunately, I'm afraid that we're going to reach a point where people are going to wake up one day and go, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that. Maybe we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in now. And I really do hope that people start to get off the couch and realize just how serious these issues are.
You're absolutely right. And sometimes people are, I don't know if it's denial. I don't know if it's that they try to ignore it and hope it goes away on its own or hope somebody else fixes it. How many times have you heard people say, well, they'll fix it. If such and such is elected president, it'll all go back. Or, I've heard people say that. And I'm thinking, no, it's not going to go back because of a president. It's not going to go back because of something somebody else is doing. It's going to go back when you do it.
Yes.
This is your time. These are your children and grandchildren. This is not someone else's responsibility. It's yours. And that's really, if everybody were to, I guess you'd say, search their soul, they would understand how important their voices and their actions are at this time in our history.
Yes.
So with that being said, what do you think is the biggest danger local citizens face at this time in our history, as far as actions from the government, or what do you think that is the most, I guess you'd say, scary thing that we're facing at this point?
Again, Stephany, I have to go back to the scariest thing is the apathy and the complacency of the people. Because I have literally heard elected officials say, because, we've had events where we've brought in elected officials and put them up on our stage and asked them questions, because some of them are up for re-election and you want to know who you're voting for. And so we had them up on our stage and we were asking them all kinds of questions. And I've literally heard candidates say before, with a smirk on their faces, if you don't like it, vote me out. And they laughed because they knew that they weren't going to get voted out because the people of the community aren't doing their research and they're just voting for whoever the incumbent is without looking at how that person has been voting over the lifetime of their tenure, and whether they're in the House or whether they're in the Senate or whether they're mayor or whatever. You have to research who you're voting for. And they were literally laughing when they said that because it was funny to them because they knew they weren't going to lose. And that's a sad statement for where we are, because they recognize that there's so much just apathy and complacency because people either think that they can't affect change or they just don't want to get involved. And both of those are wrong. Both of those are wrong. And in the last election, not the current one, but in the last election in Knox County had a 9% voter rate. 9% of the people registered to vote in Knox County voted. And so if you think about that, that's not even, you're just talking about the people who are registered to vote, not the entire population of Knox County. So 9% of the people registered to vote in Knox County are electing the officials who make decisions for 100% of the county. How does that make sense?
You're absolutely right. People often discount their vote and their voices by saying, well, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway, even if I go down there and vote or if I say something in an open meeting. And, to counter that, I've often said, well, they're certainly going to do what they're going to do without your voice as well. So, which side do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side of complacency, or do you want to actually speak out for your family and for your kids and yourself and your community? So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I do have to say too, though, Stephany, is that because of, what's happening with the grassroots, because of what's happening, with some people who are actually, they're standing up, they're speaking up, they're making their voices heard. As you're well aware, with our coalition, with the Tennessee Constitutional Grassroots Coalition, as these grassroots groups are growing and standing up and speaking up, we are seeing a difference in our Tennessee legislature, and we're seeing a difference in our county officials, because now they know that there are groups out there that are watching them. There are groups out there that are doing everything that we can to hold them accountable and to bring these things, to the attention of the rest of our community. And so we are seeing differences. We're seeing bills being, brought up for votes and bills that are passing that are everything that we need to protect our faith, family, and freedom. So what we have to do once the General Assembly passes those is then we have to follow up, and we have to make sure that those laws are enforced. And it's our civic duty. It is up to us to ensure that the governance of our communities are not corrupt. That's our job. They're not going to police themselves.
Absolutely. And as you know, Tracey, we have realized, many people have, that it's not just about parties anymore. It's about they're working, many of them, for the same people, or
Yes.
same interest, or the same priorities, instead of for we the people. So it's no longer just a Republican versus Democrat. It's more like we the people versus something more nefarious. What is the most common rhetoric that you think is used against conservatives by those who do not want their actions to be discussed or who avoid being questioned? I mean, what kind of rhetoric are you hearing out there when people resist this type of thing?
Yeah, so the things that I'm seeing is that they want to make you look like you're crazy. And so, they'll tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist and those things aren't just happening. It's just you're wrong. You're not, you don't understand because, they've been in office for so many years and you don't know what you're talking about. They do, but you don't. So the other thing that I would say is that, again, it's all a matter of doing your research and sticking to it. Once you've done your research, you know what you're talking about, Stick to it, because they will call you any number of names to try to get you to be quiet. And, we just have to reach a point where you don't care what names they call you. You don't care what they say about you, because the protection of the faith, family, and freedom of your children and your grandchildren is far more important than any name they're going to call you.
Absolutely.
And that is one of the things, because I've heard them do that. I've heard them call people crazy, and I've, and say all kinds of, just mean things, like, going back to the Mean Girls Club, just mean things, just to get you to be quiet, just to get you to shut up. So when that happens, you're over the target, and you just need to get louder. Honestly, you just need to get louder, because you're doing what they don't want you to do. You're bringing things to light that they don't want people to see. Excuse me. So that's one of the biggest things, is just making sure that you don't quit, don't give in, even if they're trying to make you look crazy, even if they're calling you names, even if they're calling you a racist or a bigot or whatever name they come up with. When that happens, you're over the target. So keep going.
One of the things that we notice here in small rural counties is basically people that call themselves Republican. We have more problems with the local Republican Party, the established Republican Party, basically using rhetoric against us than we do the local Democrats. It's amazing that we're a conservative group, but we can't seemingly have any support from the local Republican Party. I mean, we've been invited to have a table over in the far end corner last year and that kind of thing. But, like you said, we're considered kind of like the outcast of the local Republican Party. We're kind of that strange table that nobody wants to be close to. In fact, many of us were, we went to the Republican dinner, and many of us, nobody even spoke to us, barely spoke to us or even recognized us. So they did recognize our table, but as they did everybody, but it was almost like, ooh, we don't want to be close to you guys. You all are the tinfoil hats of the community. We get a lot of that too. Many of our members have been told to move. It's almost like bully-like behavior. Just because we ask questions, just because we stand up for our principles, just because we ask, why can't we do it differently? Has anyone thought of this or that? And we question the elected officials. And then suddenly we're basically ostracized and said, oh, you all are just attacking us. And it's like we're the bad guys. It's like they're trying to turn the tables on us and make us out to be the weird kids. And so it's really weird how this works. And our coalition members, they could sit here and say, yep, she knows what we're talking about. So as far as the citizens go, what do you think is the most effective mechanism that citizens can use to keep our local officials accountable to we the people?
The best thing that they can do is get involved with a local grassroots group, because your voice is much louder when it's combined with several others. So that's the way that you make your voice heard, is you join with other people, other like-minded people, and you will have resources available to you. You'll have people that you can you can ask questions. You can get ideas, you can get resources. So that's the first thing to do. If you want to hold somebody accountable, get involved with a grassroots group where you're not just alone. You're not just speaking, a lone wolf. You have an entire pack of people with you who are saying the same thing. And once you start to grow in numbers, then they start to pay attention. Whereas if you're just a single person, and you're just constantly nagging your senator or representative or mayor or whomever it may be. You know, it's much, much more effective if you have the numbers behind it. You know, I'll also say that, you know, we have a problem in Knox County with people running for office as Republicans who aren't Republicans. And the Republican Party is backing them and supporting them. And we have one gentleman running for county commissioner as a Republican this year who literally ran for school board as a Democrat last year. So it's again, it's one of those things where you're like, make it make sense. And they do feel, I believe that for whatever reason, they don't see conservatives as being support for the Republican Party. They think that we are extreme, and they think we're radical. And I think that the reason for that is because conservatives, for the most part, we don't care which side of the aisle you're on. We intend to hold you accountable. And the Republican Party, if you ask them what their job is, what their goal is, they don't tell you what they stand for. They tell you that they exist to ensure that the incumbents get reelected. And that's a really sad statement, because they're reelecting people regardless of their voting record, regardless of whatever craziness they've done while they've been in office, or how poorly they voted, or even if they voted against your freedoms, which we all saw that, and you need to remember that when you go vote. But the Republican Party, they don't want to hold anybody accountable at all. They would rather reelect a really bad person than to have to admit that somebody in their party isn't towing the line, and that they need to find somebody else. And it's a sad state of affairs. It really is.
Yeah, and in rural areas where your major employer is the government, the local government,
Yep.
it's difficult for people to join a group like this. And I've even had people reach out to me privately that are employed by local government, especially our teachers, and say, "Hey, we believe in what you're doing. We just are afraid that we'll lose our jobs." And so
Absolutely.
that's I understand people don't want to lose their livelihood, but that's something that the school system holds over their heads, that if they speak out publicly, have a differing opinion about something, their job could be very much in the balances. So we have that all the time, people reaching out, and they won't come forward because of that. So we're losing a lot of people that way. But, we've also had people that said, "Hey, you have more support out here than you realize. Just give it time." And the thing that I've learned, Tracey, is that people don't often get involved until they feel the pain, till they feel enough pain. Human nature, they just won't get involved. It's just like your health. When you see your health is going down, and you try to change your diet, or you try to exercise more, you don't do it until the sense of urgency is there. What say you about that?
I say, how bad does it have to get? I mean, honestly,
Absolutely.
everything that we've already been through. I mean, you've had the federal government threaten to take your livelihood if you don't inject something into your body that is clearly experimental, and quite frankly has taken numerous lives and created all kinds. I don't even want to talk about all of the damage that it's done to people's lives. They've threatened that. They've threatened your First Amendment freedoms. We're blocked on social media all the time because I literally just this past week was posting on Facebook about the prayer in Tennessee, and literally had my post blocked multiple times. I had to try many times before I could finally get it to post, because the overlords told me that it couldn't be shared, that was not a shareable post, because I was posting about people getting together in the state of Tennessee to pray. So, I'm like, how bad does it have to get? They've come after our children, and they've told you they're not even hiding it. They told you they're coming for your children. They're coming to convert your children to whatever they want them to be. Today I'm going to be a giraffe. They've come for your children. They've threatened your livelihood. They've threatened your health by trying to force you to take something that you don't want and is clearly experimental and does nothing to help you and clearly affects your DNA. I mean, how much worse does it have to get? I mean, I can go on and on. There's a whole huge list. We've allowed to buy, China and Bill Gates to buy up all of our farmland. You've got states out there that are trying to shut down farms because they don't want people to be able to grow their own food. They do not want people to be self-sufficient. That alone should scare you out of your mind and get you off your couch and make you say, uh-oh, I need to get involved. I mean, how bad does it have to get? What is that final straw that pushes people over the edge to make them say, you know what? I really need to get involved, and I'll say this, and I know I'm preaching to the choir and I'm preaching on top of that. But if the churches would stand, if the churches would be the warriors and the lions that God has called us to be, this would be game over. Most of the craziness that we see going on in our society today would stop. Because we know where our freedoms come from, and it's not the government. And if the church would stand, this would all stop. If the church would vote, this would all stop. The church has to realize that, and I ask people all the time, and anybody that's on your show, if they can send you this information, I'd love to see it. Show me where in the Bible that it says that we are supposed to sit still and be nice and don't say anything and don't get involved in your local government. Don't get involved in your community. Where is that scripture? Because I've yet to find it.
Tracey, I don't know about you, but I don't think the word docile is even in our vocabulary.
Nope.
Definitely not, with us.
Not at all.
All right. So, one of the things that has always bothered me is the use of committees, appointed committees. And this is enabled by our state legislature, which is even more marveling, where the mayor can appoint committees to basically make decisions for the public. And I'm not sure, and I know a lot of them are already commissioners, but they have all these little subcommittees and they get together in these little groups, and it makes it so convoluted and so difficult for citizens if they wanted to come to the meeting. Now they got to chase down 8 to 10 committees to go to their meetings to see what in the world they're going to do to them next. So that makes it even more difficult to follow this stuff. What say you about that type of thing? Do you think that that's a nefarious thing that the state does just to help out the local politicians, or is that just, what do you think that's all about?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm watching myself on the camera and I'm seeing parts of me like disappear every time I move with my background. So it's pretty funny. But I will tell you, we experience that a lot in Knox County because of the Planning Commission. And as you know, in Knox County, the Planning Commission is comprised of different people, mostly commissioners, but there are others on that planning committee as well. I have personally experienced, going to the Planning Commission and, speaking out against properties around in my neighborhood, in my area, where I felt like that they're trying to cram all of these, houses in here in a rural area that is literally zoned agriculture. And, the thing about these committees is they can do whatever they want. And I can go and speak against them. But until we do something about these committees and until the people stand up and say, no, enough, we just fought that battle here in Knox County, against their growth plan policy. And we fought against it. And I never heard a single person at any of those meetings stand up and say that they were for this policy. Everybody spoke against it. Even the Democrats spoke against it. And it still passed. It still went through. And so, until we're ready, until we're prepared to stand up and say enough, and we're prepared to literally, when these people don't do when they don't do the will of the people, we've got to vote them out of office, period. We have got to vote them out of office, and you've got to put people in office who are, good, conservative people who understand the will of the people. They understand what we're looking for, what we want. They understand faith, family, and freedom. They understand that we want nothing to do with the World Economic Forum. They understand that, we don't want a globalist society. We are a republic. And so many people keep crying, our democracy, our democracy. We're a republic, people. Evidently, a lot of us didn't get a lot of history in high school, which, I can attest to that. We didn't get a lot of history taught to us in high school. So, we didn't get a lot of civics taught to us in high school. Those are critical skills that every person needs to learn, needs to know. Every person needs to go and read the Constitution. Read it, know it, use it. Because that's the only thing that's going to protect us from the corruption that we're seeing at every level of government. But it's going to take the involvement of the people, and the people are going to have to be willing to do some research when they vote. And the other thing I will say, and this is critical, and this is something that we found especially in Knox County. Not only do people need to vote, people need to run for office. Now, is it fun? Absolutely not. It's not. Can it get ugly? Most definitely. It can get ugly. People are going to be mean to you. They're going to lie about you. They're going to call you names. They're going to dig up stuff you did when you were in the first grade. It's ugly. But until we get more good conservative people running for office so that people actually have a choice, then you're just going to continue down the same path. We have to stop the cycle. We have to stop this cycle of doing the same thing over and over and over again. We just have to make sure that people are willing to stand up. People are willing to do what needs to be done to save our county, save our state, and save our country.
Absolutely. One of the most popular things that people say to me, especially if they're trying to give me a tip about something, and this goes back to my old newspaper days, is I'm going to tell you something, just don't use my name. And that's
yeah.
Just don't use my name, because people, like I said, a lot of people in the county are employed by the local government, and they don't want their names out there. So yeah, it's pretty harrowing for people when they, especially now that they realize how volatile politics is. I mean, just for saying an opinion. So yeah.
But it shouldn't be.
Let's no, it shouldn't be. But it's far worse than anyone that has never been involved in politics. It's far worse than you ever imagined. Take it from someone who knows.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you got tons of stories to tell yourself. So, Miss Tracey, tell us a little bit about something exciting coming up that I think that we can all wrap our hands around. This is called Freedom Fest. And tell us a little bit. I'm going to try to pull up the event window, and you can guide us around there. So let me get that over here. So
So first, let me tell
Can
you
you see
about
that?
TCGC. Yep, I can see it. So TCGC is a coalition that we started back in October. And basically what it is it's all of these grassroots organizations all around East Tennessee. There are currently 13 counties that make up the coalition, and we have some in some other counties that we're looking at now that may be joining us soon. And so you can see our map right there, so you can kind of see which counties we already have groups in. So if you're in one of these counties and you're looking for a good grassroots group to get involved with, we've got a list of them down below where you've got contact info. You can reach out and get involved. They're doing great work. And I will also say that, okay, if you can scroll back up there for just a second. Okay, there you go. There's all of their contact information, and we are growing, and there will be more groups joining us soon. But the goal of all of these groups is, it's like what I was talking about earlier. If you want to make your voice heard, then we're all going to have to join and work together. And that's the whole purpose of TCGC is, we're supporting each other and we're working together, and we're making sure that conservative voices in Tennessee get heard. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is we're having a Freedom Fest this year. It's on September the 28th, and it's in Loudoun County. If you click on that red button there on the left, you can see if right there on Freedom Fest, it says event flyer, reserve free tickets. This is a free event. We're going to have several great speakers, entertainers. We'll have food trucks. We'll have inflatables, the big playground things for kids, all kinds of things for them to do. It's September 28th. It's from noon to 8 p.m. Again, it is free admission. Just bring your bag chair and come on out, your camp chair, whatever you got, your blankets, and come on out. You'll really enjoy this. We're still looking for sponsors. So if you're a business and you want to help sponsor this event, then you can click on the sponsorship info, and that will give you everything you need to know there. But I would encourage you to go ahead and reserve your free tickets if you want to come, because that just helps us to plan for, food and spacing and all like that. I can also tell you that Freedom Fest is sort of like a fair without the rides. We're going to have vendor booths. There's going to be people, selling things on T-shirts. For the ladies, there was a really cool booth we had last year where she was selling some 2A accessories. So it was really, really cool. And so we'll have all kinds of booths and things set up like that. But we're also going to have all kinds of conservative organization booths set up. So if you want to talk to somebody from Tennessee Right to Life, or you want to talk to, somebody from Stephany's group, or you want to talk to somebody from Knox for Liberty group, or, all of these groups are going to be there, and they're going to be set up so that you have an opportunity to figure out what are all of the conservative resources in East Tennessee and how can I get involved. And if it's okay with you, Stephany, if you've got just a quick second, I'd like to just kind of list some of the people that are going to be there. One of our speakers will be Aaron Fulcher. He is a 20-year-old. This is amazing. He is a 20-year-old who is running for school board in Wilson County. A 20-year-old conservative. I mean, it's amazing. So he's going to be speaking. Angela Faulkner, who is the Deputy Director of Grassroots for the Leadership Institute. Andrea Gomez, Citizens for Renewing America. Bernadette Pager from Stand for Health Freedom. David Clements, who is he's an attorney, and he's a former professor, and he is the producer of the movie Let My People Go, which is all about election integrity. Gary Humble, who is the founder of Tennessee Stands. George West will be our MC from the George West Radio Show. Jeff Cobble, who is a constitutional attorney with the Cobble Law Firm in Greene County. Joe Hoft, who is the co-founder of the Gateway Pundit, and he's also a radio and TV host. Joe Altman from the Conservative Daily podcast. Maria Wagner from Moms for America. Pastor Ken Peters will be there from Patriot Church. We'll have the Rebel Mountain Band. We have 5 already of our state representatives. We have Elaine Davis, Jason Zachary, Justin Lafferty, Lowell Russell, and Monty Fritz, who just sponsored the resolution to make the month of July a month of prayer in Tennessee. Sean Farash, who is Captain Deplorable. He's a podcaster, and he does some amazing Trump impersonations. He's hysterical. Steve Friend, who is the FBI whistleblower. He will be there. And Willie Franklin, who is the founder of the Lost Vets and a musician, he'll be on our stage. And, you know, we have more being added to our lineup every day. So all of that information is out on the website at tcgc1776.org. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great event. Everybody's super excited. We need more sponsors, and we need people to go out and register and get their free tickets.
Absolutely. And you can see the website below in the scroll. We called it what was it? We called it a string of or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So below, that's the website. We'll be listing the information about the event, Tracey, on our, we're going to start scheduling the flyers to run every day. So nice. Be sure to like and share these flyers, talk to your friends and family. We've got a lot of good businesses up here and vendors that I think would be amazing at that event. I think that you're going to have a very good event when it's all said and done. Yes. So anything else you want to add to your time with us tonight before we depart?
I would just ask that, you know, all of your viewers, everybody that's watching, you know, please, you know, if you care about your county, your state, and your country, please get involved somehow. Please get involved with one of these great grassroots organizations. Please go vote, and please pray. Pray for all of the above. Pray for our county, pray for our state, pray for our country. You know, the events that we're seeing, I hate to use the word unprecedented because it's been so, you know, it's been used to death. But I will tell you that the things that we're seeing now, there are so many of us that we haven't seen anything like this in our lifetime. And it's going to take every single one of us to turn this ship around because, you know, the U.S. is a pretty big ship. And, you know, we got a lot of folks. And if we want to protect our faith, family, and freedom, it's going to take every single one of us.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody out there that thinks that, you know, this is something that they don't want to be involved in. You know, this is your time. This is our time. You know, our founding fathers had their time. And then, of course, generations through wars and different struggles we've had, the Civil War and all kinds of different things that's happened in U.S. history. You know, everybody felt the same way. Nobody wants to have perilous times, but, you know, that's just how things fall. And God knows, God understands, and God knows that, you know, he's chosen us for this time. And as I said, with me, he's got a sense of humor, but he knows that that we've got this, and he's guiding our every move and the things that we do and say. And just, you know, pray for one another every day. No, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, but we've got this. We just have to stay faithful to his word and keep on keeping on and fighting for freedom. And like I told everybody, I bragged about you, Tracey. I said you were a great lady, a great patriot, and, you know, you are a woman after my own heart. I've seen your struggle, and you inspired me, because sometimes over here in Union County, I feel a little bit alone, and it's just nice to know that there's people like us that are trying to basically do the right thing and keep our country as free as possible and make all of our counties great again. Kind of modeling after the America First model. And so we'd love to have you back at some point as we get closer to the event. And want to thank you for being on our podcast. Sorry that we got off to a slow start this evening. We had a little technical difficulty, but we'd love to have you back, Miss Tracey. And God bless you for your efforts.
Well, thank you so much, Stephany. I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. God bless you. And I'm going to make some announcements. And without further ado, have a great night, Miss Tracey.
Thank you.
God bless.
You too.
All right. That's a wrap for our interview with Miss Tracey Smith. I do have some announcements. Let me get this taken care of real quick. All right. So we do have some announcements that I wanted to bring up before we end our podcast this evening. So over in Decatur County, we had a first and potentially a second reading to abolish the constables in that county. And this happened last night. They had their first reading. It takes 2 readings from the county commission to abolish the office of constables. And we, along with the constable council, got involved and got some people, I guess, notified and spread the word. And that was defeated. They will be keeping their constables in Decatur County. We kind of had short notice, so we didn't really get to announce it completely out in as far in advance as we wanted to, but we usually notify our police, people's police clubs and that kind of thing, and try to get them involved and just spread the words, because the people don't want to have their elected law enforcement taken out, for lack of a better word, right here at a time that we need them the most. So this particular law that was put in place a decade or so ago has caused a lot of problems with constables being targeted by local county commissioners to have them defunded or to have them abolished. And the Tennessee Freedom Coalition supports our constables across the state. There are actually new laws in place that protect our citizens and our constables from having issues, the issues they used to have with rogue law enforcement and things like that, or constables or police that don't have all their training. Those issues have been addressed with our state legislatures, and now we still have commissions that do not understand those laws, try to every now and then come after the constables. And so when that happens, the people and the constable organizations have to get involved and basically go do a presentation and stop the vote. So that is very good news this evening. Very tickled that that has happened and that those folks over there have the law protection that they deserve. We also wanted to announce that our first Union County Day of Prayer with Representative Monty Fritz did very well. We had, I was not able to attend because I had another engagement. That was another thing that was actually kind of passed on to the coalition to organize very quickly. It is not our event, but we told the representative that we'd be happy to spread the word. And hopefully, because there were so many people that missed the event because they didn't hear about it in time, there's been some polling out there that says that Union Countyans are supportive of having a day of prayer in our county at least every maybe few months or so. And so that, I think that would be a good thing for our citizenry to get together and join in prayer. Certainly we need it. We need to pray for one another. We need to pray for our elected officials. We are living in very dangerous times and times when we need prayer. We all need prayer. And so that was very successful. I just wanted to let you all know about that. So anyway, without further ado, that's pretty much it for tonight. That's a wrap for another episode podcast of the Tennessee Thunder podcast. Again, I'm your host, Stephany Davis. I'll be back next week. I'm not sure who our guest will be. We've got several people possibly going to join us next week, and I know we've got some guests coming on at the very end of the month, or at least at the 1st of August. And I'm trying to stay ahead at least 2 or 3 weeks out. But I expect our calendar is going to start filling up now because we're becoming more consistent with our podcast every week. And I also wanted to extend our prayerful concern for Jason Mills' mom. She has been ill, and just wanted to let you all know about that if you haven't heard. Anyway, you all have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. here on the Tennessee Thunder podcast. Have a great evening, and God bless.